I guess the first thing I always want to ask someone who's running as a Green Party candidate, why are you running now and why are you running as a Green?
Well, now, because I've lived in New Haven for 22 years, and every time that I've gone to vote, and I'm a very avid voter, and I believe very strongly in voting, I have noticed that most of the races, there's only one candidate, and that's for everything from the Board of Aldermen on up the ballot. And I didn't really understand how that happened until recently. And what I learned is that there's this very onerous kind of petition process that any opposition candidate of any stripe has to go through just to get on the ballot. And the process is so hard and frankly so hard to even learn what the process is that in nearly every case people are discouraged, fail to meet all the requirements. And so we have this kind of anointed sort of insider track where the one person on the ballot automatically gets the office. And that's not democracy. And of course, the Green Party, we had a Green alderman in my ward that I used to live in when I first lived in New Haven. And he was fantastic. He came by on his bicycle and was talking to the voters and was just so involved and so responsive. And of course, I really support very strongly the Green Party's values. I support, the environment. I support sustainability. I support diversity and democracy. And all of these things are really, they're really popular in New Haven. They're really what we're all about. And yet we had, a couple more Green alders after him. And then it kind of sort of fizzled out, in New Haven. That there were no Greens running anymore. And, we continued into that thing where there's just one candidate. And that to me isn't democracy, because what I am hearing and what I'm experiencing in my own aldermanic ward is these people who have been put in office through this process, they're not responding to the voters. They're not listening when voters are complaining about issues such as there's a park that they're trying to sell to a developer, and they're just rubber stamping these things. And they don't care about their constituents' concerns about trying to save one of the few local parks in their community. And when we have other events or are trying to reach our alder, we're just getting no response. And that's because, really this sort of one candidate system, it's corrupt, because the person has no challenger. There's no one to worry about having to beat and to run against. And so where we have the form of democracy, we don't have the actual fact of democracy. And, 100 million people almost who could have voted were of age and eligible to vote in the last presidential election didn't even vote. And people are not voting for a lot of reasons, but the two main ones are, one, they don't think their vote matters. And they are in many, many cases correct. It was less than 78,000 votes in a very few swing places that actually decided this last presidential election. And even though most people voted for the Democrat, she lost, in the system. So on the local level, I realized that as a Green and as a registrar of voters, there were a lot of things I could do about this. First of all, it's the registrar of voters that's got the primary mission to kind of encourage and help and assist and really be the band leader for people to register to vote. And surprisingly, from my own experience at the Registrar of Voters office and also other voters I've been talking to, they don't get that kind of robust, encouraging customer service response when they reach out to our local Registrar of Voters, who after all are elected, okay? So my first thing is, first of all, I really want you to register to vote. I really want you to participate. And here's how you can do it. You can do it online. You can do it in the office. We can mail something to you. There's a many ways for you to do it. And to really make it the mission that we are excited that you've even reached out to us. Of course, it's easy for you to register to vote. Here's how you do it. Let's make sure it happens. That's number one. And then number two, for most of the local offices, it's the registrar of voters who handles this petition process for somebody who wants to be a petitioning or a challenging candidate. And I know from my own experience, because I've run one time before trying to petition onto the ballot, and I didn't make it. And the not making it had to do with a whole bunch of hoops you had to run through. And also, frankly, I was given an inaccurate list of voters. I wasn't given a list with all of my voters on it. And I realized it wasn't accurate. And I asked, can I get an accurate list? And the answer was no, no, you can't. That's the list we have. And then I said, but isn't there a map somewhere that maybe shows this district and who's in it and who's not? And they said no. And as a matter of fact, there was at that very moment a map hanging in the office next door, a large map with all that information. And yet they either didn't know or didn't care to tell me that crucial fact. And Rana, that's just not democracy. That's a fix, okay? And from day one, as a registrar of voters, I can say, no, we're not doing that. We're not hiding the ball. We are not going to treat voters and potential voters who want to register and potential candidates who want to register like they're interrupting our day and they have to ask the magic question in order to find the information. We are going to welcome and encourage and really serve those folks. And that's number one. The second thing is, though, honestly, the system is not fair, and it's designed to keep people out. And as a registrar of voter, I'm going to be advocating for reforms, such as why can't it be, as in so many other states, that if a person wants to be on the ballot, they can register, pay some sort of administrative fee, and they can be registered as a candidate. We could do that. And maybe there could be a petition process in the alternative if they don't have the money to even pay that fee. But I was endorsed by the Green Party as their candidate, official candidate for the Green Party for Registrar of Voters this year. Nonetheless, under this law, which has been instituted by the duopoly of the two major parties, I still had to go out in the middle of a pandemic and collect hundreds of signatures from registered New Haven voters out in the community. So I had to go out, in my face mask, everybody's in their face masks, in the heat, in the COVID, and basically reach out to people and to explain to them what I was doing and why it was important. And I was able to do it, but it was very hard. And without, the amount of support I got, the amount of encouragement I got, and the volunteers and the helpers that I had, it would have been impossible. And so that's a process that should be changed. And registrars of voters, they do have a statewide organization. Certainly the Secretary of State looks for recommendations for policy changes, and that's a big policy change I would be advocating for. In addition to ranked choice voting, which if we're going to have a lot of candidates, then the natural thing is, well, if we have 5 candidates, that's going to be a kind of a crazy election, isn't it? And I'm like, well, that's where ranked choice voting comes in, because if there were 4 or 5 candidates, you would rank them from your top choice to your least favorite choice, and then whoever ended up winning in that process would be the one that most of the people in the city were the most happy with. And that would give us a much more democratic and fair and satisfactory process.